You're listening to NGSC Sports Radio. Hear us live on ngscsports.com, where you can get awesome analysis for all things sport. Or check out our podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, and much more. For our latest videos, head to NGSC Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at NGSC Sports and like us on Facebook. NGSC Sports. We never stop.
This is the Happy Hour Network.
Pay attention, son. This is for your own good.
Hey, this is Jamison Welsh from BelieveTheHypeNBA.com, and you're listening to the Earnestly Speaking podcast.
The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throbbing my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
All right, welcome to the Earnestly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Ernest E.J. Christian. On the line with me, of course, it is actually Wednesday. We do this Tuesdays, but we had to move things around this week. But we still have to get it in with the man, Kyle Nash, a.k.a. the Stew of the Game, bringing the Stew of the Game report. Kyle, now I know you were in Houston for Texans Patriots. How was that experience?
Yo, man, I got to tell you, first of all, I got to give credit for a team that's relatively new to the landscape. It was not a bad experience being out in Houston, and at first I was discouraged that my man J.J. Watt was going to have a broken hand going into this game, and still nonetheless probably made one of the most athletic plays of the night, because you want to know what Bill Belichick's plan was to account for J.J. Watt? Run the ball away from him. And sometimes it just didn't matter. So, you know, sure, the game was a blowout because, you know, Hoyer sucks, but I got what I needed out of that fix, and that was to watch Watt in that defense. I guess you could say I turned out for Watt. Shut up.
Now I heard you on your podcast, the Stew of the Game podcast on Mondays. I saw you had said, and I'm a little shocked, but then again I don't know why, that you didn't find Tom Brady that impressive in person. Like, what?
I really didn't. I mean, maybe it was the fact that you know, he didn't have to really. I felt like, now granted, maybe it was because he was playing that defense, but his field position was good all night. Basically, the contact, he basically kind of either stood in the pocket or took a big hit. And, you know, Gronk had the two biggest catches of the game. There's a shock.
Yeah,
I didn't really feel like there was anything impressive there. Didn't live up to the mystique, you know what I'm saying? But I will give him credit. Brady did manage to do something in person that most quarterbacks don't get away with doing, and that's throwing the football across the field. Granted, it was when Whitney Merciless fell down, leaving Gronk open for the completion that set up their first touchdown. But not impressive to me, you know. Good field position, he scored. I mean, he did his job. But then again, that's the Patriot mantra. I'm not saying it was a bad day for Brady, but look, these droll chantings for Brady and the church that he's a member of, I'm sorry. I just didn't see it in this game. But again, getting away with a situation where you're able to throw your football across your body and get a completion is impressive stuff. I mean, you aren't supposed to get away with that, and he managed to. So I guess that's an impressive moment.
And it's a big win for the Patriots too. Remember, they came to the day, should I say, is the if the play started today, came today as the number 3 seed, and Denver and Cincinnati didn't do their jobs, which we'll get to in a second. So the Pats are back in first place in the AFC, number 1 seed. Let's stick to quarterbacks real quick though, because in Denver we might have another controversy again for the second time this year. Brock Osweiler has looked, I guess, for the most part. He hasn't made any mistakes, really, but he hasn't done anything really huge for the Broncos. And there's been some talk now that Peyton Manning is starting to make his way back, and not this week, but maybe next week, that Peyton Manning might get his job back. Do you agree or disagree? If you're the Broncos, do you still do you rock for Brock, or do you go back to Peyton and see what he can do?
So, look, first of all, we called this after the New England Patriots game, and people were saying, oh, my God, Brock, put stock in Brock, right? And what we called is the best thing, or at least I did, and you seem to agree with it, I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. But what was said was the more time that passes, the better Manning looks, because it increases the opportunity for error, like, say, I don't know, losing to the Raiders 15-12. That could be. But I'm not putting that one on Brock squarely. It's funny that it took the Raiders to remind everybody, hey, you know, the thing that stunk the most about this offense was its line. Sure, Peyton Manning happened to disintegrate into dust at some point, but that line is still what needs work, and they were still trying to put together a situation to dare Brock to throw the ball down the field. Not necessarily a bad idea for a first-time starter, but then they remembered, hey, that line still sucks. Maybe we should just put him under pressure rather than daring him to throw the ball, and it worked.
I'm with you there, and I personally think that, and while there is some, what you're saying there is actually probably true, that more time away might actually help Peyton on the back end. We saw during the bye week before the Green Bay game and then into the Green Bay game, that's probably his best game of the year, really, arguably, this year. He has had many bright spots this year as it is. That was his best game of the year. Definitely. Then he fell again. I do agree to a point there, but I will say this much. I don't think Brock Osweiler has played bad enough to lose his job. The problem with Peyton Manning is the fact that Peyton Manning was costing the Broncos games. Okay? In a league where there's a lot of bad quarterback play, he was arguably the second worst quarterback in the league. He was
at least one of them.
Yeah. So the numbers don't lie. And let's face it, so all the Peyton Manning stands out there, he has not looked good. He's been terrible this year, period.
The problem is that numbers do lie, EJ, because up to week 5, Peyton Manning had won 2 football games with plays at the end. However, by the time he actually did break the record, another number for you, by the way, set for career yards, the truth, I think there's truth that Peyton Manning, that the one that was dust in the wind that day, I mean, not just second worst starting quarterback in the league, obviously the worst. He could not complete the simplest pass.
You're talking about the Kansas City game.
So it's all... I am talking about the Kansas City game, the second Kansas City game to be specific.
Right.
But because the first Kansas City game, he led a charge to tie the team back up and give his defense the opportunity to pick up that fumble to win the football game. But no one remembers that. That's why numbers lie, EJ. I say all that to say this. At the point that he looked so terrible, despite ironically breaking that record for career yards in that game, at that point, he was a bad quarterback. Not even the biggest Peyton Manning apologist could debate that.
Right. Well, I'm glad you said numbers lie sometimes, because I want to go to the next topic here on the Cincinnati Bengals. Andy Dalton, number 1 rated passer coming into the week, okay? He's out probably for the season, maybe back in the playoffs. We don't know. We heard two different sides of the story about his prognosis in terms of when he will play again. We know the narrative on Andy Dalton. We know. We discussed on the show for like a couple of years, actually. You know, good quarterback, fails in the postseason. People are really hard on Andy Dalton. I feel like now, and I compare this to what happened week 2, week 3 with the Cowboys. I feel like the Bengals fans who are hard on Dalton are about to have their Romo moment. You don't know what you got till it's gone.
Well, they had that a while back. I mean, you know, when they were undefeated as long as they were, I think they had this moment that you're talking about. But what's very interesting to me, people are talking about, should they rush Andy Dalton to come back? I say no, but not necessarily because I think A.J. McCarron is the answer. Let's be clear. Have you seen the rest of their schedule, okay? It's the Niners, the Broncos, and the Ravens. 2 out of those 3 are gimmies. And if A.J. McCarron can't win 2 of those games, well, there's your Tony Romo moment, but I digress. I say all that to say this. They have to remember the principle of being chased by a bear. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You just got to be faster than the last one next to the bear in the chase. And that being the Broncos in this case, with that fall to the Raiders, I think that they should hold McCarron out, let Dalton get back to his max, let him step onto the field, not necessarily the week of the playoffs, but maybe even, I don't know, if he's ready to start against the Ravens, or maybe starting against that first game in the playoffs puts him in a different mentality than he would have been in the past 4 years. It would be something different. I think keeping McCarron in the game for the last 3 weeks does two things. A, is he all that and a bag of chips, like the people who booed Andy Dalton in the preseason at a softball charity think? Or is he a little bit more cracked up in the minds of the fans than he should be? Everybody's favorite player is the backup quarterback when things aren't going exactly the way that fans want. That simple.
Right. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say Dalton's a top 10 quarterback in the league, but I will say he's productive, gets the job done, and like I said, I think the Bengals about to have the rumble moment if they ain't careful. I don't know if you saw the game on Monday night, though, my boys against the Dolphins. But I want to talk about my man Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, Eli did his thing, obviously. Eli's the Eli, but Odell Beckham Jr. I it's funny because there was talk coming into the year after the year he had last year, considering the numbers he put up in 12 games. A lot of people thought that it was a fluke. There were even rival cornerbacks saying that I don't know if he's that good. Is it time to look at Beckham as a top 3 receiver in the league right now? Because I think you can argue that right now that he's a top 3 receiver in the league.
He's at least in that discussion. It's really hard to put a guy that young as a top 3 in the league, but there's plenty. There's a collaboration of evidence that could give somebody a pretty good argument to put that together. Would I say that? I don't know. I honestly have trouble with that. He did get praise from Josh Norman going into the upcoming Panthers game. I'll say this. I won't judge anybody, Giants fan or not, if they say it today. Because there's certainly evidence to do that. It's not just the numbers. Look at the film, man. It's what he can do on a dime as far as moving is impressive. And he's not exactly a bad blocker either.
He's not bad. You look at the top 3 to 5 receivers in the league. Julio Jones. You think of Julio Jones, okay? You think of Antonio Brown, obviously, probably the best in the league right now. The guy is an absolute workhorse, okay? Then it gets kind of testy because I would still put Dez in that conversation, but this year it's kind of like a little bit of a weird situation because he didn't have Romo all year. So by default, right, Dez probably should be there, but won't because of the situation. I think we've seen the best.
So you want to leave AJ Green off? You want to forget about AJ Green altogether?
I'm going under. Calvin Johnson. Okay. Calvin Johnson. We've seen the best of Calvin Johnson. He's still really good.
Yeah, I don't even know why you're bringing him up right now. To be honest, we talked about his decline.
Yeah, he's already on the way down. He's still really good. He's still a top 6-7 receiver, but he's no longer the guy he was 3 years ago. So
Absolutely.
you look at the roster of receivers that we consider the greatest. AJ Green also. Look at Beckham, what he's done in just in a year and a half to 2 years. The numbers, it's historic numbers.
Yes.
And that's the thing you can't ignore.
What he's done in the first few years. Yeah. Let's talk about how oftentimes he is the only guy with some of the injuries that the Giants have been facing. Ruben Randle has been on the field on and off and been limited.
He's been terrible. He's been terrible.
Let's
call a spade a spade. I'm a Giant fan. He's been terrible. He last week complains that he's not getting enough looks, but then when he gets looks, he drops the damn football. So I want to hear that, Ruben Randle. Sorry.
Bitter, party of one, bitter. Party of one. Your table is now ready.
That's right. Let's stay in the NFC East real quick. Look, I know it's a bad division, but really the NFC East really is a presentation of what the NFL really is. There are really a little over 20 teams in the league who are either at 500 or below 500. So the NFC East isn't just the only teams that are actually currently